₹10:30 Yes,
Hello, 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 Linda.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, Indra. Morning, Brother Pradeep.
Yes.
Good morning. Namaskar. How are you, sir?
Hello, Ganesh.
Namaskar, sir.
Yes. Namaskar. Yes, now I am able to do the bad thing, so one can join automatically. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Mahapatra ji.
Good morning, good morning. Yes, I have two instruments very close to each other. Lakshmi sir. Each and everyone can see you and Catalina.
So do you want to make a trial of sharing the screen or?
Yes, this
yes.
is what I have been testing here.
You can share because I co-host can share.
Sorry.
Co-host can share the screen. No problem. You can share your screen. Yes.
Is it there?
Yes, yes,
Right, sir.
it's there.
Does it contain the word MUMUKSHUTVA?
Yes, union with all life.
So then it's not a hacker.
No, it doesn't seem to be. Unless it's a very perfect hacker that hacked it exactly the same.
You can try to advance the slide also and see whether
Yeah.
it works.
Sorry.
Maybe you can try to go to the next slide. Just for a try.
Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Does it have Shankaracharya on top?
Yes, Shankaracharya, and then Buddhist, Christian, Alcyon, etc. Yeah.
Then it's not a hacker.
Now we are 100% sure.
There is aspirations to know one true self.
Sorry.
And Shankaracharya aspiration to know one's true self.
Yeah, that's true. How large is the slide on your computer?
Full screen, it's coming the full screen. I mean, your face on one side, but the rest of the screen is the slide.
Is it better?
Actually, the same. I mean, it doesn't seem that something has changed. It's looking the same. Just went to the next slide, that's all.
But the question is, can you read the words?
Sorry? Then read the words? Yeah, very good. It's in a very good size. Yeah.
Okay. I won't try to improve
Just
it.
show you for you to see, look. Here.
Okay, thank you.
It's the entire screen. Okay, yeah, very good.
Catalina, you can start now.
Okay. Okay, warm greetings to brothers and sisters that joined today for the last session of the International Study class of the Theosophical Society in India on the book The Way of Disciple by Clara that has been conducted for the past 2 weeks by Sister Linda Oliveira and Brother Pedro Oliveira. Before I introduce Brother Pedro, let us come together by pronunciating the universal invocation. O hidden light, vibrant in every atom. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. O hidden light shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know that they are also one with every other. Well, Brother Pedro Oliveira has been a member of the Theosophical Society since the 70s, the end of the 70s. And during all the time that he has belonged to the Theosophical Society, he has held different number of positions, including International Secretary here at Adyar, President of the Societies in the Pacific Federation since he is living in Australia, Officer in charge of the editorial office and at the international headquarters, and Education Coordinator of the Australian section and President of his parent lodge in Brazil. Brother Pedro is a deep researcher of theosophical literature and history, and he is therefore the author of many articles and 3 books. And he also gives lectures extensively for the society at an international level. Brother Pedro, welcome today to this last session, and please, floor is all yours.
Thank you. With the help of a number of people, I have developed a pre-CD, which is to put slides on a Zoom presentation. I meant it's not a CD in itself, it's a pre-CD. So I thank all of those who helped me to do that. In this presentation, we will see, we will see Ms. Clara Codd's comments on the last qualification for the path, which is alluded to in the Sanskrit word MUMUKSHUTVA. We are told that in its original meaning, it represents an intense desire for liberation. I did a little etymological study, and apparently the Sanskrit word moksha is derived from a verb, a verbal root in Sanskrit, muk, which means to let go. So liberation is this capacity acquired over many, many incarnations to let go of everything that is personal or illusory or untrue. But in a defeat of the master, remarkably, this qualification is translated as love. And someone once asked in an interview to Mr. Krishnamurti, why do you keep giving talks for several decades? And his answer was, probably out of love for, he didn't say humanity, but obviously his sense of love was not personal. Here, Clara Codd, Miss Clara Codd refers to MUMUKSHUTVA as union with all life. Of course, if there is such a union, whoever experiences such a union naturally experiences love in its ultimate sense. So let us see what she has to say. Now, I have been able to put the first slide within the Zoom system. Let us see if you can see the second slide. Is it there? I'm hearing some voices.
Yes, it's there.
Yes,
Yes.
it is there.
Thank you. So I will only ask you this time. I won't ask you anymore because now if two slides have appeared on your screen, probably all the others will appear. As usual in previous chapters, she made a collation of what different teachings and teachers have to say about this unity with all life. According to Sri Shankaracharya, and this is a translation that she found, MUMUKSHUTVA is an aspiration to know one's true self. The very expression true self implies that our personal self is our second nature. It's not really our first fundamental nature, is a second nature. In Buddhism, it implies natural sequence. That means consequent on the development of other qualities. So if one develop the other qualities, MUMUKSHUTVA, this feeling of oneness with all life would be a natural sequence. In the Christian tradition, there is this part of the Sermon of the Mount. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. A number of teachers have suggested or said that the fundamental impurity in life is a selfish heart, because it contaminates everything that we do, our relationships, our work. If we are undergoing education, our education, and so on. And therefore, Jesus declared this: blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. If there is real purity, that means if there is the absence of self, there is this natural vision of the divine. And then Alcione, in the book At the Feet of the Master, says, of all the qualifications, love is the most important. For if it is strong enough in a man, it forces him to acquire all the rest. And all the rest without it would never be sufficient. Often it is translated as an intense desire for liberation from the rounds of birth and death, and for union with God. It is indeed the will to become one with God, in order that because of your deep love for Him, you may act with Him as He does. Many years ago, in a talk at Adyar, Radhaji quoted a sermon of the Buddha to his disciples. That was not a public sermon, in which he said, even the notion that one should serve others is an impediment. And of course, this is open to personal interpretations, but she made it clear that as long as we maintain this separateness, this division between ourselves and others, the idea of service has very little meaning. On the other hand, a person who serves selflessly can realize the deeper truths in life. There is a letter from Master K.H. to Annie Besant. This letter was received by her in London in August 1900, 9 years after Madame Blavatsky passed away, and therefore it puts to bed the idea that Madame Blavatsky had written the Mahatma letters. This letter to Annie Besant, in this letter it is said, "Let the devotion and service be to that supreme spirit alone, of which each one is a part." The Mahatmas were not interested in personal worship or personal devotion, but they wanted the members at that time to realize that devotion should be directed to the Supreme Spirit. And finally, there is this passage of St. Paul, which is very, very well known, from Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. "I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me." St. Paul, before he became St. Paul, he was called Saul, and he used to hunt down Christians, arrest them, and send them to prison in Jerusalem, where the government of Rome was located. But he had this fundamental experience on the road to Damascus, in which a very strong light shone upon him, and he was knocked to the ground, and he couldn't see. But there was this light, and from the heart of that light, from the center of that light, a voice told him, "Saul, why do you persecute me?" And Saul, without any hesitation, being a Christian hunter, he said, "Is that you, Lord?" And this is after Jesus had resurrected and ascended to heaven. So he did meet Jesus in a spiritual state, and then he experienced this complete transformation. Whenever Madame Blavatsky, you can confirm, don't take my word for it. Whenever Madame Blavatsky mentions St. Paul in her writings, she always calls him the great Christian initiate. And she wouldn't misuse that word. So she really was convinced that St. Paul was a true initiate, because he experienced this profound spiritual transformation. Back to Miss Clara Cord, she quotes the Delphic oracle in Greece: "Know thyself, and thou shalt know God and the universe." That's the importance of self-knowledge. And she says, "Even a man's physical body is a storehouse of symbology depicting the forces of the universe. But the self which will reveal the infinite is not the outer symbolic self, but that pure essence of divinity which lies deep within." So self-knowledge was also emphasized in the Upanishads, in the Brahma Sutras, in the works of Sri Shankaracharya and many other teachers, in Ramana Maharshi, but also in Rumi, in Kabir, and many others. So self-knowledge is not an intellectual exercise. It is a capacity to quieten the mind so that we can see within ourselves at a deeper level, not at the level of thought, not at the level of description, comparison, analysis, but at a level of realization. And of course, this self-knowledge is transformative, as this passage says. Ms. Clara continues by saying, we may call it in theological terms the desire for union with God, or in wider natural terms, with all life, and therefore with all men and all living things. This realization is the love of which Krishnamurti speaks. It is at the very base of our nature, the last thing original in us. We have to uncover and understand layers of thought and desire and all the images in order to reach it. We cannot create it. It is. Love is not a mere emotional attraction, says Miss Cod. Krishnaji once said, you cannot think love. It's a state of being. And he tells us that it comes into being when all self and thought has ceased. You can see that this is certainly not for beginners, but it's certainly the next step in human evolution. Love is not thought, love is not description, love is not emotion. There are people who make all sorts of emotional professions to others, but when there is a difference of opinion, love goes out of the window. And Krishnamurti says, love is a state of being, not an emotional state, not an intellectual state. It's a state of being. It is something that belongs to the essence of a person, much beyond name and form, nama and rupa. Then she quotes from an interview with Krishnamurti and the writer Rom Landau. There aren't any people I dislike. Don't you see that it is not I who direct my love towards one person, strengthening it here, weakening it there? Love is simply like the color of my skin, the sound of my voice, no matter what I do. But it is not indifference. It's merely a feeling of love that is constantly with me, and I simply cannot help giving to everyone I come in touch with. I know a person who attended a talk by Krishnamurti when she was very young, and she was unable to follow his presentation with her mind, but she said she was profoundly impacted by his compassion, by the compassion that emanated from him. I'm saying this not to make Krishnamurti into an authority, but as an important testimony that this depth of love does exist and can be experienced if a person becomes open to it. Back to Miss Clara Cord. We cannot create it, but we can find it and let it shine so that all men are blessed. I knew and remember something of of what that divine love, agape in Greek, is from that wonderful meeting in Benares long years ago when Krishnaji was overshadowed. I seem to see then momentarily through the eyes of the Lord Christ, the Buddha, Maitreya, the world teacher, and I knew then that with him was no shadow or sense of difference, no big or small, no important or unimportant. All were equally important, equally dear. Love knows no difference. It is one with all life. Truly did St. John say that the man who stated that he loved God and hated his brother was a liar. This is certainly is that it could be construed as true regarding quite a number of people and movements in the world. They call themselves Christians, but their discourse is one of relentless hatred towards others. The meeting Miss Scott referred to happened in 1911 when the Order of the Star in the East was formed by Dr. Besant, and the young Krishnaji was the head of the order. She and Brother Ledbetter were patrons. And the description was this: there are something like 300 or 400 people, and Krishnaji was handing over membership certificates of the Order of the Star. And two had received the certificates from his hands. And when the third person approached him, that person suddenly prostrated before him. And Mr. Ledbetter, who could see what was happening at the inner levels, he said that there was an immense spiritual power in the room that filled the entire room. And later on, Dr. Besant said that this marks very clearly the fact that the Bodhisattva would use this young boy for his work. I think that the best description of MUMUKSHUTVA are the Master's words in that last letter to Annie Besant, already quoted. Let the devotion and service be to that Supreme Spirit alone, of which each one is a part. And that realization, said the Master to Mr. William Judge, makes you care less whether you are strong or weak, learned or unlearned. I would like to repeat this. That realization, said the Master to Mr. William Judge, makes you care less whether you are strong or weak, learned or unlearned. Because that realization goes much beyond ahamkara, or the sense of self-importance and self-centeredness. She continues, these things are immaterial in the eyes of spirit, for the divine reality is beyond all pairs of opposites and is itself neither. Being merely good does not lead us to heaven, though it makes us easier to live with and creates a happy future life. The Master K.H. wrote to Miss Francesca Arundel, a TS member in the London Lodge, mere goodness is not enough. And on another occasion, the Master M said, we are not seeking to make good people, but mighty spiritual powers for good. Purity, said St. Augustine, is a negative virtue, chiefly valuable as a condition for illumination. It is in reality wholeheartedness, singleness of purpose, and to such reality will reveal itself. That passage from Master M, we are not seeking to make good people, but mighty spiritual powers for the good, appears in different places in the Mahatma letters and the letters from the Masters of the Wisdom. In those passages, they say that the disciple who is advancing on the path reaches a point where he or she becomes a beneficent force in nature. The person is so suffused with beneficent consciousness that nature uses that person to bring more harmony, goodness, compassion into the world. Reality cannot truly be imaged. It is utterly beyond human imagination. As well as ask a chicken within its shell or a flower in bud to picture a world they have never seen. It cannot be described by any metaphor, but it can be felt after, looked for, and desired. This is a quote from Light on the Path, one of the deepest treatises of spiritual development on the path that we have. Then she quotes Light on the Path, rules number 20 and 21. Seek it by study of the laws of being, the laws of nature, the laws of the supernatural, and seek it by making the profound obeisance of the soul to the dim star that burns within. Steadily, as you watch and worship its light, steadily as you watch and worship, its light will grow stronger. And when you have found the end, its light will suddenly become the infinite light. So I suggest that we consider this the word study here. The word study here does not necessarily mean an intellectual study, a comparative study, but a focusing of awareness and attention on these laws of being, the laws that govern being or beingness, the laws of nature. Madame Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine says that the laws of nature are a manifestation of Mahat, the universal mind. And that's why they are so important for the development of planet Earth. The laws of the supernatural, that is what is beyond the development of nature. In other words, higher planes of consciousness. And equally important, seek it by making the profound obeisance of the soul to the dim star that burns within. The star which burns within the soul is the monad, a complete and unconditioned consciousness of the unity of all existence. Then it says, steadily as you watch and worship, its light will grow stronger. So the more awareness there is, the more attention there is, reverential attention, this light grows stronger within us. And when you have found the end, its light will suddenly become the infinite light. And that is not just the monad as such, but the eternal as well, that which is beyond time, that which is completely beyond separation. Then she introduces the final chapter on initiation, and she says, the initiate is one, as the word suggests, who has entered the way and began the great ascent. That is a metaphor for the path. He is at first but the little child and must grow to full stature. That takes many lives, roughly speaking. It is said 7 from the first initiation to the 4th, or the Arhat level, then 7 more to the Asekha, the 5th initiation. But these calculations are very problematical, Miss Cod says. As HPB once said, the 7 years of probation may mean 7 lives or 7 minutes. In the case of Mr. Leadbeater, he received a letter from the master on the 31st October, 1884, replied through Madame Blavatsky on the same night, and in the early hours of the 1st of November, he got a reply to his reply saying that it is my desire that you should go to Adyar immediately. And he signed off the letter saying, greetings, my new Chela. So his probation was slightly small. I also would like to mention here, she doesn't mention by names, but the Buddhist tradition says that the first initiation is called Srotapati, literally entering the stream that will lead the disciple to nirvana. The second initiation is Sakridagamin, the one who is going to reincarnate only once more, followed by Anagamin, a person or a soul that will not reincarnate again. And the 4th is Arhat, the venerable one, someone who is an embodiment both of wisdom and compassion. The word Asekha in Sanskrit means someone who doesn't have anything else to learn. The learning process is over for an Asekha or an adept. Now, Ms. Clara Cod has some quotes and comments about the subject of initiation. I would like to suggest that in the history of the TS, there is a great deal of confusion about this, and many individuals in the past claim to be initiates, and as we shall see, a real initiate doesn't present any claim. In my work for the Indo-Pacific Federation, I visited Sri Lanka 5 times. And in one of those times, I was given the opportunity to have a conversation with a senior Buddhist monk. And I asked him this question. Probably the question was indiscreet, but he didn't complain. I said, are there arhats alive in the world today? He said, it's difficult to say, but there is a law that says that an arhat will never say he is an arhat. Somebody who has achieved that lofty stage doesn't have an ego to promote. And he or she has no desire to impress others with their projected spiritual status. Before we continue with Ms. Clara Cord's comments, I thought on the subject of initiation, it would be relevant to share with you some ideas of Mr. N. Sri Ram. This was originally a talk at the School of the Wisdom on the 5th of December, 1957, which was found at the archives at RDR. He says, the superficial idea about initiation is that a person goes to a certain room, somebody comes and tells him various things, he is told to put on a different robe, presented with a talisman and so forth. That would be a poor view. Initiation means that the deepest aspect of oneself moves towards the surface, and the monad takes the vow through the ego or the higher self. I'll repeat, the initiation means that the deepest aspect of oneself moves towards the surface, and the monad makes the vow through the ego. So it's a state of complete spiritual awakening, undescribable in personal terms. He then proceeds and says, this is really a vow of self-surrender, a resolve to give oneself completely to the service of humanity and all that lives. It is not administered from outside and accepted for certain reasons. That would be a mental way of looking at the whole thing. In reality, the vow is an evolution of the inmost purpose of the ego himself or itself. It is not merely accepted, saying you will carry it out to the best of your ability, but it means that you discover your own inmost purpose, your own inmost nature. It is really a translation of that nature in terms of the intellect or mind. And we must regard all this in the most natural terms possible. The more natural things appears, the truer it's likely to be. So he's basically suggesting that real initiation is a contact with our deepest spiritual nature. And therefore, once that contact happens, we can never be the same. At this stage, I have to announce to the household that a cat is calling. Back to the comments by Ms. Clara Cord. The disciple is subjected to certain tests. These are described in certain occult treatises as being by earth, air, fire, and water. But they are in reality psychological. It must be remembered that upon the psychic plane, our emotional responses are very much more vivid and spontaneous. Vivid objective images are projected and the candidate's instinctive reaction is noted. In the case of one initiate whom I know, one such presentation was a little crying child. In the case of another, it was his mortal enemy. And the test is, how do you respond to that? How do you respond to a little crying child? And how do you respond if your mortal enemy comes to visit you or appears in front of you? This is something that each one of us has to answer for oneself. This is the last slide. The last act is very beautiful. She's talking about the ceremony of initiation. The last act is very beautiful. The new initiate turns and faces the world, sending out to all living beings, living things, and as he knows he has the right to do, the blessing of the brotherhood of adepts, of which an initiate becomes a member of. There are no living things which do not receive it, this blessing, although they may not be conscious of that reception. I once asked Mrs. Besant how they might feel it, and she replied that a little child playing in the sun would feel a thrill of joy, and a sufferer on a bed of pain would feel his pain for a moment lessened. Thus also, in this way, does the brotherhood lift a little of the heavy karma of the world. And an initiate is often an unconscious healer, because from him or her, harmony is flowing, and the cause of much disease is disharmony. One of the 6 signs of the perfected man or woman is that involuntary healing takes place in their presence. So a real initiate carries with him or her this sense of blessedness that they share with others, this sense of helpfulness. And although he didn't want to be known as a healer, it is a fact now established by a number of biographies that Mr. Krishnamurti did have the faculty of healing, and he did heal quite a number of people. And he didn't want to be known as a healer, but he couldn't help sharing these healing powers. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Pedro, Brother Pedro, for always bringing us something to inspire and to reflect and to go beyond our limitations. And well, now the space is open for questions, for comments. We have today quite more time for that, so please, everyone, feel free to do so. I can see some big comment here in the chat. I'm going to read it from Brother Ganesh Kumar. Thank you, Brother Pedro and Linda G, and all members of the Indian section for your time and effort organizing these fruitful sessions to us all around the world. With regards and best wishes to you all, and also to those who have contributed behind the scenes. And okay, more messages of thank you, thanking you. And yes, well, I don't know, I don't know if I can see Mike's camera open and Jane's camera open. I don't know if maybe you open because you have some comment or some question. If you do, please feel free to unmute yourselves.
Good afternoon. Can I ask a question from Pedro?
Please, please.
My question is the initiations that you mentioned. I think you mentioned 4 of them. And who carries out these initiations? Is it the esoteric section of the Theosophical Society? Is it the Freemasons or other organizations? Or is it within the TS?
According to the literature, the conferring of such initiations are in the safest hands possible on the planet. And that means the masters of the wisdom. And they only confer such initiations for those who deserve them. At the end of our convention at Adyar in 1884, the Master KH sent a message to the convention. It's a tradition. A convention receives messages from different places. But he sent a message, and at the end of his message, he said, "Blessings to all who deserve them." So, fortunately, the real initiations cannot be obtained online, cannot be paid by credit card, but they are inward spiritual experiences that are conferred, transmitted, so to speak, from the masters of the wisdom to candidates whom they find worthy.
Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you. One question here in the chat from Vasavaraj Reddy. How to compromise the whole procedure of MUMUKSHUTVA?
Compromise?
Yeah, I mean, it's written compromise, but I mean, maybe what, I don't know if Brother Vasavaraj Reddy is there and maybe can clarify what is the...
He is there.
Means
Yeah.
the whole procedure of it, how we can, in totality, how we can compromise it. The
Yeah,
part of
When you say compromise, you mean achieve it?
yeah, sir, yes.
Okay. Like the other qualities, MUMUKSHUTVA, or this love or the desire for liberation, is as Miss Clara suggested, it's the natural development from the other qualities, right? So Viveka, Vairagya, Sat Shampati, which we saw yesterday, and then MUMUKSHUTVA. I would say very tentatively that the quality of MUMUKSHUTVA is the natural result of someone who has experienced a certain depth in meditation. I mentioned Sri Lanka and that particular monk, and I asked him another question. I may be repeating myself, but it may be for a good cause, I would say. I said to him, there is a great interest in the West on Vipassana meditation. And I said, what is your definition of Vipassana? So he was silent for a while, and then he said, Vipassana is to look at oneself intelligently. If we look at ourselves intelligently, there is no self, and therefore there is no problem. But if we look at ourselves unintelligently, there is a self, and therefore there are problems. So MUMUKSHUTVA may be something similar. The deeper your experience of meditation is, the more you are going to realize that you are not on the path or practicing these qualities to become an influential person or to cause people to admire you or anything like that. It is a very, very profound experience. And Miss Clara Cott mentions light on the path when she says that we have to pay our obeisance of the soul to this light within. And St. Paul, which she didn't quote, I'm quoting now, he said the same thing. He said, do you know that you are the temple of God and that the Spirit of God dwells within you? Some people may say, well, this is poetry, but this is not practical life. It was quite practical for him and many other seekers and disciples across the ages.
Thank you. There is one more question / comment from Brother Duval. It says, very interesting sessions. Thank you. Are there any members after J.K. and Leadbeater having clairvoyant or healing powers?
The answer is yes. But I'll have to ask for some payment before I say. No. There are a number. For example, Mr. Geoffrey Hodgson was a very committed theosophist, and he had, I know this because I corresponded with him when I was young, a young theosophist in Brazil. He had a very long healing list of people who were really sick, and he used to have a kind of a small healing ritual to help them. And he was a clairvoyant. Practically all his books are the product of his clairvoyance. Another very distinguished clairvoyant in the Theosophical Society was Mrs. Dora Kunz. She was born clairvoyant, and she lived for a while at the Manor Center here in Sydney. And she said that Mr. Leadbeater used to give her some tasks. He was not trying to condition her, but he used to give her some exercises. Then she would report to him, and he said to her, well, why don't you try to see further than what you saw, and so on. She, together with Mrs. Dolores Krieger, a very experienced nurse in the US, they formed a healing method called therapeutic touch, where they could diagnose diseases by just passing the hand over the body, never touching the body. And whenever they found a change in temperature, they saw that there was some sort of blockage of energy. and then they would apply this therapeutic method and so on. So and also in England, we had Mrs. Phoebe Bendit, and she was also a clairvoyant. She wrote about the etheric double, and she also wrote about the stages of a woman's pregnancy, clairvoyantly examined.
Thank you. Just a curiosity came to my mind while you were talking about the therapeutic touch. Are there trained people in that kind of technique currently?
Yeah. Yes. Dora Kunz and Dolores Krieger, they trained hundreds of nurses in America. And I am sure people from other countries also received some form of training. And a book, there is a book about this, which is available from the Theosophical Society in the US.
Invite more comments or questions. Brother Mahapatra, is there something that you want to comment?
Yes. No, no comment. There are many places it is mentioned. Then instead of thinking of initiation, we should carry our mundane work, what is given in the at the feet of Master, and follow it in a day-to-day life. And the great teachers are there. They will look after when and how we become the initiation will be given to us. We should not bother about initiation, but let us carry on the work for the humanity through Theosophical Society, as well as follow the principle given in At the Feet of Masters. It will be for them to look after us. Okay. Thank you, sir.
If I knew that before, I wouldn't spoke this last talk, because it was scheduled as initiation by Miss Clara Cord. The one thing I would like to say, I was a young theosophist in Brazil, and I went to visit a very eminent theosophist in the city of São Paulo. I was living farther south in Porto Alegre. And he told me a little story. He said when he was my age, he wrote to Bishop Leadbeater, not Bishop, he was just Mr. Leadbeater. He wrote to him and said, with a question, and the question was, how can I find the masters?
Yes.
I have developed a small theory that whenever you ask a question of a wise person, you don't really predict what the result will be. So he asked the question, how can I find the masters? And Mr. Leadbeater replied to him, said, work for the Theosophical Society. It has worked for me.
Yes.
If there are no more questions, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Brother Pradeep Mahapatra, who invited us to give this class. Brother Pradeep Gohil, who is the national president of the TS in India. Catalina Isasa Cantor, who has been our moderator and technical advisor here. Yes. And all the participants. I hope to see some of you at ADR in December.
Yeah, yes, sir. We'll meet at ADR.
So hopefully we will meet very soon. And well, if there are no more questions, and before closing the session, if Mr. Pradeep wants to add something, or I just pass to the closing.
pay our gratitude to Brother Pedro and Madam Linda for agreeing the proposal of conducting online international study class. So that is a great thing for us. And just it is a revision for us, each and everyone, to know something on this MUMUKSHUTVA, this what is given in this book, The Path of Disciple. Thank you very much to each and everyone present here. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Thank you. And to
Thank
Sister
you.
Linda and Brother Pedro for all their generosity
Yes.
with us, for all the, as I have said for the past 3 days, the food for our thought and our soul. And I guess after this gathering, we take a lot to our personal life and daily meditation to get in the, into the deeper into theosophy. And thank you very much, Brother Pradeep,
Thank you.
also
Thank
for
you.
organizing this and for always being the spirit of sharing theosophy and involving people in this wonderful work that the Theosophical Society in India is undertaking. Thank you very much to all. And
Are we going to see Yuna in the next study class?
let's see, at least in Adyar, yes, you will see her running around. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We are now going.
Bye.
All, thank you very
Bye.
much and have a great week ahead.
Bye.